Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. You're watching my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, August 12th, 2024. Enjoy. Case file number 1764, written by Gothic Green. Twice the towns, double the rounds. I catch a bus between where I currently live and my hometown, back and forth every weekend. An hour-and-a-half trip, 2 stops between where I get on and where I get off. Got on QN Hurago as I'm writing this. Nothing unusual. Usual route? Only thing odd is the overhead lights. They've been left on the entire time, versus usually being turned on only at stops. Anyway, bus stopped at stop 1, 40 minutes into the trip. Driver called over the speakers. 5 people got off, and we started off again. About 5 minutes later, the driver calls again over the speakers, stop 1. Same 5 people get off, and we hit the road again. I'm 100% awake. I never sleep, due to being worried about missing my stop. Regardless, the overhead lights would keep me awake even if I were to try. Very much confused. I thought the driver just misspoke, but then the same 5 people got off again. One being from the seat in front of me even. And I'm definitely not just mistaking the second stop for the first one, as it's a good 20 minutes between the two. I'd even noted a cute charm on a girl's bag both times before I processed that it was the same. Sat here for a while, trying to understand and rationalize, but I'm still super weirded out. Extra info. The bus stops are not called stop 1 and stop 2. They are the town's names, which are not alike at all. Impossible to mistake one for the other. Case file number 1765, written by Majestic Mode 8509. Cheese sticks and berry tricks. I was making lunch for my kids, a variety of fruit, cheese, and English muffin with jam. I pulled everything I needed from the fridge. Strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, grapes, jam, and cheese sticks. I unwrapped the cheese sticks and set down the wrappers. There was enough blueberries to evenly distribute them between the 3 kids. I then put the container in the sink as it was empty. We usually transfer fruit from the store-bought container to Tupperware. The blueberries were the only ones in Tupperware as I hadn't done the rest of the fruit yet. Next, I opened the blackberries. I noticed fuzz growing on multiple berries, and I was pissed as these had just been bought a day prior. I literally said out loud, "Well, that's a load of crap." And I grabbed the cheese wrappers and threw them away with the berries. I had to walk to the trash can, because the only way to open it is by stepping on the lever in the bottom. I plopped them in the trash with the wrappers and continued fixing the plates. When I was done, grapes, strawberries, and jam went back into the fridge. A few hours later, I went to the fridge to get myself a bottle of water, but the blackberries were sitting at the bottom of the fridge, dead center. I stared for a minute because I was confused. I opened them, and they were the same fuzzy blackberries. My first thought was maybe my husband bought 2 packs, though I was sure he didn't. So I checked the trash. Literally dug through the trash. The cheese wrappers were there, but no blackberries. I threw them away again, and then through the course of the evening, checked 3 times to make sure they were still in the trash. So now I'm all, what the hell? And I'm still kinda shook. Case file number 1766, written by the 34-0. Dreams That Wake. A life at stake. About 8 years ago, I was working as a manager at a group home. Now one Friday, staff came in and I had to work late. The house I was in had an extra room, so sometimes I would sleep there if I had a late night and was too tired to drive home. So this day, same thing. I went to the back room and fell asleep. The night staff guy had come. Now mind you, I was supposed to be gone and had no interaction with the staff after clocking out. I fell asleep at about 11 p.m. Now you know what a vivid lucid dream is. It is the craziest thing to happen to you if you ever had one. I was deep asleep and I heard someone tell me, "Wake up!" I ignored it. "Wake up!" I woke up really surprised, shocked I might add, and confused. I look at the clock, 3:14 a.m. So I woke up to get some Hot Pockets and something to drink, as I hadn't eaten dinner. I walked to the kitchen and turned on the light. What the hell? One of our residents is on the ground choking. Now a little background on him. He was nonverbal, with high mental issues. He had a condition known as trismus, where his jaw only opened about halfway, meaning he was a high choke risk, and the damn night staff was passed out, sleeping on the couch in the living room. He is not allowed to get near any food, as he doesn't chew and swallows only. He had woken up and wandered into the kitchen with his food-seeking behaviors. Dude is on the ground choking. He had stuffed his mouth full of bread. I immediately start CPR while trying to get the mouth dislodged. He had gone limp. I shout for the night staff, who wakes up confused. Initiate 911. By luck, the piece of bread came out when I did the compressions. I lay him on his side, recovery. Paramedics come and take him to the hospital. Until today, it makes me shudder. It is about a 4-minute window for someone to die from choking on food. How I woke up. I was so tired. What worked me up at that exact time, what made me stay in, usually I left to go play video games and beer on weekends. I was even investigated that I might have done something like hit him or abused him, and covered up with choking, but doctors and x-rays showed he definitely choked. This was an accusation the night staff tried to distract with, because he was being charged with neglect of a vulnerable person by sleeping at the job. I was not supposed to be there that day. What screamed at me to wake me up like that, at the very exact time I needed to wake up? P.S. It was a thankless job, and just so you know, I got nothing for it. Case file number 1767, written by Palpitation Proper 520. Law, Love, and the Sixth Sense Shove. I got married in August 2000. I was headed to law school and my husband to a master's program, so we had no money. We both love movies, so decided to use some wedding money for a DVD player. It was 2000, and honest to goodness, Blockbuster had just started a DVD rental shelf in the middle of the VHS tapes. Is there a more 2000 sentence? I'll wait. Anyhow, I love movies and I love movie rental stores. When I discovered Blockbuster's little shelf of DVD rentals one day on my own, I was so excited. I looked over all the DVDs available and saw The Sixth Sense as an option, and I adore that film. I silently decided right then and there that I would buy it as the first DVD I would own, just as soon as we purchased that DVD player. I would rent it ASAP in the meantime. Sometime later, maybe that week or the next, pretty close in time, we went to Sears in the mall to get the DVD player. Again, 2000. It was a whole thing to work with the salesperson, to peruse our options and finally decide. We chose a Sony player, and they handed us the sealed box, and we went on home. It was later in the evening, and I was a little bummed on the drive. We could hook up the player to the TV, but would have no DVD to play and try out the new toy. I thought again to myself, but never out loud, the next day I would go to Blockbuster and rent The Sixth Sense if I could not buy it straight away. To be fair, it was less simple and more expensive at that time to just go purchase a DVD. We got home, we unboxed the obviously factory sealed player and hooked it up. I pushed the open door to test it, and there, in the tray, sat a silver DVD. I wonder if it was some sort of trial disc or instructions or something similar, so I picked it up. It was The Sixth Sense DVD. I looked at the packaging to make sure this was not some sort of included promotional material, much like a Nintendo or Xbox may include one game with the purchase, but nope. No mention of such an inclusion, and having lived decades since, purchased many DVD players after that first one, I have never since had any movie included with any player. The player we purchased was not a floor model or the last one they had, so it had not been hooked up in the store for demonstrations or the like. I have never told the story. It's too weird and wonderful a gift from the universe. I am forever grateful for it, however it came to pass. I still love physical media, and still have my vast and curated DVD collection, with original packaging for most, but not for The Sixth Sense, which is the DVD I own with the best backstory. Case file number 1768, written by Technology 1. Terrifying night, guarded by mom's saving light. When I was a kid, my sister, 12, and I, 8, went to a movie in our very small town. It was the first time our parents let us go to an evening movie by ourselves. We agreed to meet our parents outside of the movie theater afterwards. This was in the early 90s. The movie got out earlier than anticipated, so we hung outside for a while. We noticed a man appear across the street from the railroad tracks and depot. He made his way directly across the street from us, just staring at us. The movie theater was already closed, so we couldn't go back in or use the phone. We got scared and decided to quickly walk a few blocks away. He followed us, keeping a half-block distance. We panicked and ran into the nearest building that had unlocked doors. It was a USPS building. It was at night, so of course wasn't staffed, just open to access the P.O. box. He made his way directly outside of the building, so we were effectively blocked in. We were on the verge of a complete breakdown when my mom's car lights appeared down the street. Once he saw the lights, he hurried off. I guess it's not much of a mystery. More of a how bad that would have been if my mom was another 10 minutes late. Though it is mysterious how she found us so easily. Case file number 1769, written by Ninta, Whisk and Whimsy, The Hallway Mystery. My husband was cooking dinner last night. From where I was sitting on the couch, I could see most of the kitchen and down the hall. The part of the kitchen I couldn't see was the furthest part from me and the hallway. As I'm watching him cook, I can hear the cooking utensils in the pans and hear him moving stuff around. I see him walk out of view to the far end of the kitchen and can still hear him moving around in there. 3 seconds later, I see him walk out of the bathroom, down the hall, and into the kitchen. I guess I was in shock because I said, "Where'd you come from?" He replied that he had been in the bathroom for several minutes. I know there was only a few seconds from the time he walked to the far side of the kitchen and came out of the bathroom. There's only one entrance to the kitchen, so he couldn't have left it without me seeing him. There is no way he could have gone from the far side of the kitchen to the bathroom. We are on the top floor, so it would have involved cutting a hole into our neighbor's apartment and using a ladder to get back up into the tiny bathroom window from outside. I didn't tell him about it because he was already freaked out by weird things happening lately. Like a shoe was moved down the hallway, over a baby gate, and into the middle of our bed. The dogs don't play with shoes. They can't get through the gate, and are too short to jump on the bed. Case file number 1770, written by Awkward Hugs. Bridge to Sorrow, Hope for Tomorrow. A few years ago, my dad's cancer spread to his bones, and he was made palliative at home. It was a tough time, but my sister and I took comfort knowing that we would take care of his every need, especially since I'm a nurse and she works in admin in a hospital. We understood what we would go through. I was heartbroken, but not anxious that our time with him was coming to an end. Then nightmares start. Every single night for 5 weeks, I dream that I drive over a bridge on the highway that takes me to my mom's house. Every dream, every night, I can never make it to her house because I crash. I never die, but I'm falling in my car, hit the ground, and then go on with life, in the dream. I don't have anxiety when I wake up. I just wonder why I keep dreaming the exact same scenario every single night. Finally connecting it to just feeling a sense of being out of control of my dad's fate. After 5 weeks of these dreams, one night, I feel something else is wrong, but I just can't figure it out. Then I got a call that my mom was in the hospital, waiting for helicopter transport to a cardiac surgery hospital. She's having a massive heart attack. My nurse brain tells me that everything will be okay since a chopper is on its way to get her. I called the hospital for an update since it was prime COVID time and visitors were not allowed in. No answer on the phone in the ER. I rationalize this as a shift change and it's busy. 30 minutes later, I got the call. She passed away. They were doing CPR on her when I called the first time. The helicopter had just landed. She was being transferred to the stretcher to go to the helipad when she crashed. She never liked helicopters. So now mom has passed away and dad is still palliative. They had been divorced for over 30 years, but remain good friends. The night she passed away, I didn't have the car crash dream and never did again. 3 weeks later, and we have our dad in hospice. I asked the staff if they could shave his face during his daily wash. He was obsessed with not having an unkempt appearance, even in his weakest time. He said he had to be presentable when he met his maker. Not even 1 minute after they cleaned him up and gave him a shave, he took his last breath. A wave of relief came over me that I have never felt before. After both their passings, I feel as though the dreams were telling me that I couldn't get to my mother because she would no longer be there. She would instead be waiting for my dad, wherever the afterlife would take them. And I would crash in the sense that life was really difficult for me for some time, but I'm doing quite well now. Case file number 1771, written by Sophia141, Asthma, Plea, and Dream Telepathy. This is one of the cooler things that have happened to me recently. This happened in July. I had hung out with my friend over the weekend, and her mom was panicking that she needed to find someone to watch her younger son on Monday, because she had to leave to visit her mom in hospice at the last minute, and my friend had work. Since I work remotely, I offered to watch him. So that Monday rolls around. My friend lives in central Jersey, and I live in Pennsylvania. Since I don't own a car, I had to get up really early to call a Lyft to the train station, then make the early train so I could make it to their house before my friend left for work. So I run downstairs because my Lyft had arrived, and my boyfriend is sleeping on the couch, knocked out playing Call of Duty or something. My boyfriend starts having some sort of asthma attack, so he starts panicking because he can't find his inhaler, which is typically on him at all times. And I'm panicking because my boyfriend is having an asthma attack, but also my Lyft was there and I needed to take that train. So I search for the inhaler everywhere, and whenever I'm under pressure I talk to myself. I might have said some type of prayer to Saint Anthony, or just repeated something along the lines of, "Where the frick is this inhaler?" But regardless, I eventually found it. My boyfriend survived, and I made my train, all was well. Now here's the trippy part. A couple hours later, I got a text from my brother. He lives in California, so there's a 3-hour time difference. He was just waking up. This is how the conversation went. "Brother, I had a dream you were asking me for an inhaler, so I have to ask if you feel okay." Me: "That's so weird. I was looking for Sam's inhaler this morning. He lost it." "That's insane. You heard me in the 4th dimension. We were trying to go somewhere in the dream, and you were like, 'I can't go unless I have an inhaler?'" "Yeah. I did take some mushrooms while I ran the 50K, so maybe I was chilling in that realm a little bit." This blew my mind. My family and I have always had the most insane dreams. We all talk in our sleep, lucid dream, etc. I don't think we've ever really texted one another about being in each other's dreams, though. It's so cool we caught this. Dreams fascinate me. Case file number 1772, written by Cherry Cocktail 20. The Winter Wait at Serendipity's Gate. About 20 years ago, I was waiting for a bus in the middle of winter. At the time, I was a 22-year-old punk kid, mohawk, basically just a messy rascal. As I was waiting, this older Middle Eastern man, probably in his mid to late 30s, walked up to the bus stop. He was wearing a blue suit. Looked like he was probably an office worker in one of the financial business towers nearby. Basically, we had nothing in common. I can't explain what happened. But the second we saw each other, we just stopped and stared at each other, and smiled this really simple, sweet, confused smile at each other. I have never felt such an overwhelming sensation of, "I know you." Not in my life before or since. And I also know he felt the exact same thing. I recognized him immediately and just knew him. It was a surreal, goosebump kind of feeling. He walked over to stand next to me. We stood smiling at each other for like 5 minutes, not having any idea what to say, before he finally asked, "Do you have the time?" I shook my head, no. This was flip phone days and mine was dead. So we continued to just stand there smiling at each other. I don't think either of us had any idea what the hell was going on, just that we absolutely knew each other. When the bus came, it was empty. We walked on and immediately sat next to each other on this empty bus. Continued just quietly smiling at each other. I was confused as hell, but I've also never felt so at peace to sit next to anyone, let alone a stranger. I should stress, there was nothing sexual about this interaction. It wasn't physical attraction. He was absolutely not hitting on me. There was no weird vibe. It was entirely comfortable. It just felt right. Like, yes, of course, we should be sitting here together. I know you. This feels good to sit here like this with you. His stop came after 5 or 6 minutes, and when he got up, he just said, "Maybe I will see you here again?" I nodded. He got off the bus, then stood to watch it go as we waved goodbye to each other. Never saw him again, but I can never forget it. I think about him all the time. Look, I'm an agnostic and don't believe in reincarnation whatsoever, but this event is one thing that makes me wonder. It was a really overpowering feeling of comfort and familiarity and recognition with this person. Despite that, we had absolutely nothing in common and no reason to interact at all. Case file number 1773, written by BSJ DLD ML, Hunches and Hues, How We Avoided the Blues. My husband and I were coming back home after college. He turned to look into our next door neighbor's patio. It was piled to the top of the fence with years of junk and garbage. He loudly exclaimed that it was a fire hazard. He huffed and started going on about a negligent HOA and how they would hate to have to pay to fix everything. It wasn't something he'd ever brought up before. It was honestly never even thought of as a fire hazard, just a nuisance. He refused to sleep. ASMR wasn't working. He had intense anxiety all night. I fell asleep, but I'm guessing he eventually did too. We woke up to our dog screaming at flames at 4 a.m. She saved everyone's lives. Our neighbors had gone out to smoke at 10 p.m. Both threw their cigarettes into the junk pile, as they had done for years, but that is the time it went up in flames. I later asked him about why he had announced it was a fire hazard just hours before the fire. He shrugged and told me that something felt wrong. A few months later, during finals week, he woke me up in the middle of the night, demanding I take my final test right then. He would not take no for an answer. He woke his brother up and made us both coffee. He then monitored us and made sure we had everything submitted and every test taken. He let us go back to sleep at around 6 a.m. I thought he was just being a jerk. But when we finally all fully awake at normal hour, he just shrugged, told me that he had a gut feeling and that it hadn't gone away, not yet. Hours later, I was gaming when the Wi-Fi cut out. The same neighbors who had started the fire cut our Wi-Fi wires with our stolen gardening shears. He was grinning at us from the patio. He asked us how our finals were going. It took 2 weeks for them to fix the wires and for us to have working Wi-Fi again. My husband saved all of our grades that day. Case file number 1774, written by Fraulein Schwager. Featherweight, A Glimpse from Beyond. I wish I had an explanation for this because it feels insane. But I have no reason to lie about it, because if anything, saying it happened looks crazier. Was at a sleepover in middle school, playing light as a feather, stiff as a board. For anyone unfamiliar, it's a silly, scary slumber party game, like a Ouija board, where you try to do some seance-esque nonsense. Get together, put your hands under someone lying on the floor, close your eyes, chant light as a feather, stiff as a board, repeatedly, and try to get them to levitate. Dumb, right? A group of about 8 girls and I had been playing to no real avail, obviously. But when it was one girl's turn, we'll call her Allie, if you're out there, back me up. We did the chant, zoned in, and, before long, had this girl over our heads on, I crap you not, just the tips of her fingers. Her fully horizontal body was resting above eye level on 2 fingers on each hand, taking barely any effort or weight. And not only could I see that everyone else was only using 2 or 3 fingertips max, I was easily both the tallest and strongest person there. No one could have been lifting her alone under the circumstances. Once she got to a certain height, someone got freaked out, screamed, and her total weight fell on us. We had to stick our arms out to catch her, where she'd just been at the same level just a few seconds earlier. While I don't have a single scientific explanation, we did live in the woods in rural, old-timey New England, in an area where there were certainly colonial-era battles, issues with settlers, indigenous burial grounds, etc. Needless to say, I didn't mess around with incantations much after that. Case file number 1775, written by Fair Platform 9314. In the dark of night, something wasn't right. I lived in an apartment during my sophomore year of college with 2 friends. Most nights we'd watch TV together before we went to bed. I normally fell asleep during this, and they just turned the TV and lights off when they went to bed. I'd wake up an hour or 2 later on the couch in the dark and go to my room. One night, I woke up and was surprised that my roommate was still awake. The TV and lights were still on. I cannot remember one word of it, but we had a long conversation. Eventually, I had to use the bathroom and told her I'd be right back. My bathroom was down a hallway that connected to the living room, so you could see the living room from the end of the hallway and vice versa. I used the bathroom real quick, stepped back into the hallway, turned to the living room, and stopped dead. The TV and lights were off, and my roommate was gone. For some reason, I was just struck with this very intense feeling that something was wrong. I know the rational thought here would just be that she went to bed after I left. That's not where my mind went. I immediately felt that something was off, and the feeling was so intense that I couldn't even bring myself to walk back to the living room. I went to bed, and that's where I woke up the next morning. I talked to my roommates when we ate breakfast, and casually asked the one why she went to bed when I said I was coming back to keep talking. After I went to the bathroom last night, she was really confused and asked me what I was talking about. Both of them said that I fell asleep on the couch like normal. They went to bed after shutting the lights and TV off a little while later. The one I spoke to said that she fell asleep in her room, but didn't stay up or come back out or talk to me at all. I know the obvious answer here would be that I dreamed it all up. The problem is, they left me asleep on the couch. I woke up in my bed the next morning. The only time I remember going to bed is after I had that conversation with my roommate. I don't sleepwalk and never have. The creepier thing to me is remembering that night. Everything about that conversation and the way my roommate looked feels wrong in hindsight. Everything is just slightly off. When I woke up, she was on her couch, which was 90 degrees off from mine on the other wall. She wasn't watching TV or on her phone. She was just staring at me. I remember everything from that interaction vividly, except what we talked about. The way she moved and talked doesn't feel right, but at the time I didn't notice anything. I thought it was all totally normal, other than being surprised she hadn't gone to bed yet. And I don't understand why, because I thought it was normal. I had such a strong feeling that something was wrong when I saw the dark living room, instead of assuming she just went to bed. I am 100% sure I did not dream of this occurrence. I can't think of any reason she would have lied about it. I find it extremely unlikely that I sleepwalked while dreaming, and that's how I made it to bed. To this day, I have a sick feeling when I think about that night, and I can't explain it for the rest of my life. It's the creepiest experience of my life, and I moved into a haunted apartment after that one. None of the scary stuff tops the way I felt when I saw the empty living room. Case file number 1776, America. Written by H2G2 Gender, reflections blur and faces stir. Since I was 13, over a decade ago, reflections of myself in mirrors, flat, regular mirrors, and glass, flat, regular, and even surfaces of glass in my home, in any of the homes I lived in or often slept in, have a tendency to have some sort of glitch now and then. Sometimes my face is not the exact same angle as my head. Once it was just tilted enough that I'd have to tilt my head to the opposite direction for my face to be straight. Sometimes features are blurred. Like one time, my eyes look just like a blurry PNG version of my eyes, or my mouth just looks ill-defined. Most times when this thing happens, it's movements not syncing up right, either with a delay or janky and jerky motions. It isn't lack of my own facial recognition or just a skewed perception of self. All pictures and videos look fine, and all my carbon monoxide detectors are fine. None of my prescribed meds or any interactions between meds have any chance of causing this effect naturally, neither would any medical condition. And it doesn't happen with mirrors or glass in public places either. It doesn't happen all the time either, but just frequent enough that I would just rather remove mirrors, not look at glass when reflections would have, or should, look more defined and clear. I've kind of become desensitized to it since it happens every now and then, even over a decade after I remember it starting. It reminds me of how mirrors in video games aren't detailed, or when there's a live stream delay, like someone just didn't do a good job in programming that part of reality. Yeah, it's going slightly into an uncanny valley sometimes, but usually I just feel like I need to let things buffer for a bit before I look in a mirror or at a glass again. Kind of mildly annoying and a bit unexpected at this point. So yeah, does anyone else experience this, especially at least a few times a year? Is it bad to be desensitized to glitches like this? Should I be more worried about this type of glitch or glitches in general? Is this just a thing that happens normally? I don't think it qualifies as Bader Meinhof, to be honest. It just happens sometimes out of nowhere, and no one mentions anything like it ever. Sorry if this sounds like low-energy, passive existentialism. I'm just weirdly comfortable with the possibility of my current reality not really being real. The philosophy professors say that's beneficial for metaphysics. I came to terms with the state of my reality and the uncertainty thereof a long time ago. Question suivante 1764. Twice the towns, double the rounds. A time ripple event, or a alternate universe happenstance. So you're on the same bus, but you're seeing as it is in a different universe, but only temporary. It's always temporary with these sightseeings from different universes. It's strange, it's almost like you're inputting a coin into an arcade, and you get a limited amount of time to use. Of course, you're not aware of putting in the coin. What the catalyst is very unclear. Maybe it's environment mixed with specific people's brains? Because this does not happen to everyone, at least as far as we know. Maybe it's more common than we think, but again realize that other universes are usually very similar to our own. So maybe we're constantly seeing through the looking glass, but we just aren't aware because it zips back and forth really fast, and in those moments we're in a different universe or seeing a different one. Nothing's different. Everything is as we expect, so we never realize. I don't think it could be a space-time portal because the people were back on the bus, so this would be like a time loop if it was time-related and not universe-related. Case notes are found 1765. Cheese sticks and berry tricks. Okay, this sounds more like a time ripple, a time loop, but localized purely for those berries. And I think these space-time ripples or errors can be associated with the item itself. So it's less of a disturbance in space-time and more of a disturbance with the item that had to be reloaded back in time or back in its position where it was before. Maybe there was an error and it was corrected after the fact, not related to disappearing, but just some other error encoded into the food itself, the berries. Probably not visible to the naked eye, maybe deep embedded into the molecular structure or something. Some error behind the scenes that had to be fixed. And the easiest way to fix it is probably just to reset it. Case notes are found 1766. Dreams that wake, a life at stake. You know, there's a meme about people falling asleep at work. And it's funny to a certain extent if your job is relatively unimportant. You know, you're a doorman or, in charge of a manager at an operation facility for widgets or something. Falling asleep is still not good, you should do your job, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. But if your job is literally to sort of babysit people who aren't all there, who need your assistance and your guidance to make sure they don't die from literally choking in this case, falling asleep in that context is just an unforgivable act. And of course, if he's charged and stuff like that, I would understand it. It's negligence at the very least. But yeah, what did wake you up? Was it the guardian angel of the man that was going to die if you hadn't have woken up? I could see that being the case. Maybe your subconscious, though, at work, somehow picking up the signs that this man was going to act and the other attendant was going to fall asleep somehow. How you would know that, it's very difficult to say. Your subconscious would have to have access to future information for that to make any sense. So my guess is it's really just a guardian angel at play. And really, that's still incredible, isn't it? But your last line, that you got nothing for it, you saved a human being's life. That is a reward enough, I think. Although I understand your frustration, especially being accused of murder. That's wild. Now time for the quote of the day. I would rather be exposed to the inconveniences attending too much liberty than to those attending too small a degree of it. Thomas Jefferson. And we could cover specific scenarios where a lot of liberty does have issues. There's no perfect system, let's just start there, and then work our way up from that. And what do you do if there's no perfect system? Well, in my view is each individual should be sovereign to themselves. That's all. No one else has a right to rule over you against your will. I think that's a pretty basic point. And if we adopted it, well, the world would be very different. But it's hard to convince people of that because we're fearful. Fearful of what other people who disregard that kind of thinking would do to us. So we sacrifice liberty for protection and security and order and stability and a host of other things. But I don't think it's for the better, not in the long term. Case notes are file 1767. Law, Love, and the Sixth Sense Shove. So that is a 2000 sentence, if I ever heard one. And man, I actually miss Blockbuster. Does anyone miss that vibe of just going out into town and picking up a movie for the night, and there was an atmosphere to it, an energetic crackle? Convenience of streaming anything you want. That's convenient, but you're missing some little magic that it's hard to even describe. I don't know. But as to the glitch, there is no possible way that DVD was there just randomly. I mean, it's possible, but let's just discount that as so improbable it doesn't even matter. It's like, it's technically possible for the Eiffel Tower to spawn from the baseline of quantum foam. But that doesn't mean that if it happens, we should accept that as the explanation, because it's so unlikely. Something else happened. Now, did you place it there via your own mind, just thinking so hard about it? I don't think we're able to manifest new matter into the universe, but we might be able to pull it into us, almost like in Harry Potter with Accio. You're not specifically saying a magic spell, but you're commanding the universe to bring you what you want, what you're hyper-focused on. I think especially true if something disappears and you want it back, but that's more of the manager level, where people are fixing errors and you're thinking about it, so it's more important. But in the case of just items that haven't disappeared, they're of natural to that universe, you can still call them to you. But obviously it's more complicated than that because plenty of people are thinking all the time about money, and of course it doesn't just fall in their lap, most of the time. So what the other element is, I'm not sure. Maybe it's only specific minds that have that trait that enable it to essentially leash what they want to them. My guess is this has happened to you in other ways throughout your life. Case notes are file 1768. Terrifying night, guarded by mom's saving light. Like I've said many times on this channel, I think the scariest stories are not related to supernatural monsters or ghosts or anything like that. It's just human beings. Some of us, a very small percentage, something is broken in their mind. But the good news is, there are forces that are looking out for us, in various forms. Maybe it was just your mom having an inner sense of where you were, even though you had moved relatively far away. Even though it's not the most mysterious story ever, I think it's incredible, nevertheless. And I'm glad you're both okay. Case notes are file 1769. Whisk and Whimsy, the hallway mystery. So was this a soul bounce event? I guess I'll label it that. Where someone is awake, conscious, in one area, and their soul is also awake and conscious in a different area. Now, which version of him was he consciously aware of? Probably the original body. But honestly, I don't know. When someone projects their soul out, are they projecting their entire soul, or more like a copy of it, a projection, a Control-C, Control-V, copy and paste? Or is it not a duplication, it's just a severing? It's a split, and then they re-emerge after. Probably a split. I think recreating a soul is probably a arduous task. But just splitting it and reassembling it, it's almost like splitting up Play-Doh and then recombining it. It's not too difficult to do. And it makes sense in the mechanics of the universe. Destroying anything is very difficult, but changing its form and then recombining it, that's not too difficult to do, for most things. So I guess it's a soul split event. And there's nothing to fear with them, but it's unexplained why they happen with some people, and especially when they're conscious. I think when you're in the dream state, it's much more frequent that you're going to project your soul out, a part of it. But when you're conscious, do you feel any different? Do you feel like vigor in your body is depleted because only half of your soul is there? Unclear. But that's never been reported to my knowledge. Now time for the quote of the day. A person is always startled when he hears himself seriously called an old man for the first time. Oliver Wendell Holmes. Yeah, so I'm 34 now, so not old, but one day I'll be 44, and then 54, and then 64, and so on and so forth. To be called old, well, I'm still hopeful that science will produce a cure. It's, the lifespan escape velocity is the theory. Scientific advancement in the medical field will advance so fast, especially with AI, if we get general AI especially, an AI that can really think beyond the parameters inputted. If we can get to that with quantum computers, then who knows where it'll go. It might be 10 years and we have immortality just like that. Turn the computer on and it's already solved it. It happened that fast. Hopefully that happens. I would love to live forever. Because there's so much to do and experience, and even things I've already experienced before, it never ceases to be fun to enjoy life. I'm always confused by people who don't want to live forever, especially people who don't believe in an afterlife. If you believe in heaven, then yeah, it makes sense. Why would you want to stay here, which is okay, where there's paradise awaiting you? If you don't believe in heaven, and you still don't want to live forever, it's very confusing to me. Unless, you're in a state of total suffering, and then it makes sense. But if you're just, a normal human going about their day, especially in a Western country, that's even when you're poor, you have the internet and good food and a home and all that. So, I don't know. Life is so interesting that I just want to stick around for a while. In the meantime, until then, I could be called an old man at any point. Case notes for file 1770. Bridge to sorrow, hope for tomorrow. Man, reading this story just left me crushed. Losing both your parents in this way? That's just messed up beyond words, really. It makes you almost angry at the idea of someone managing this simulation, or if there's a god or something. Like, there's so much suffering in this way, and it's just random and chaotic. It doesn't feel right, unless we chose it, and that's a possibility. And of course, with quantum immortality, it lessens the blow, because they're still alive in a different universe. But still, damn. But I would agree to an extent that your dreams it's your subconscious picking up on details and facts about life and trying to extrapolate for them. It's not always future prediction. It's trying to anticipate potential futures. And that's what our minds do naturally. We always are abstracting ideas and projecting into the future what could possibly happen to prepare ourselves for if it does happen. Which is also why we tend to focus on negatives, because if we focus on positives, well, those are rarely going to kill us. But we evolved to focus on negatives because those negative outcomes and negative possibilities are much more of a threat to us and to the tribe. So that's why we focus on them so much, and why positive events, compliments, don't affect us nearly as much as negative events or insults. But the silver lining for this story is indeed at the end, with how your father passed away. He couldn't go into the afterlife, or wherever we go when we die. He couldn't move on until his appearance was as it should be. He was holding on just for that. It's kind of amazing, actually. And he knew that his child would realize it at some point. You did good. Case notes for file 1771. Asthma, Plea, and Dream Telepathy. The start of the story almost sounds like a cartoon event where you're scrambling around trying to find this inhaler and your boyfriend's just there and suffering and just writhing around, and you have to go because it's like this chaotic event that is almost comical because no one died or anything. When we're connected in dreams, or even in real life in the conscious world, between people we love, I like to think of it as a spiritual Wi-Fi. Obviously, we can't see the signals that connect us in the digital realm. Unless you're using an Ethernet cord, but just in general, most people use Wi-Fi, but it's just waves from cell towers or satellites, harnessing the mechanics of the universe to communicate. Maybe there's ways we don't realize are out there, and our minds are snapping to between each other, tethering like Bluetooth to a phone, just the range is much greater, and that's how we communicate. It's all subconscious, not at a conscious layer. It's not an app you can open in your mind, and now you're directly connected, interfacing in that sense, but it does exist. We just don't know how yet, and that's okay. If you went back 300 years and showed people a phone and somehow it had a cell tower as well, to show that it was working, well, they would have no idea how the hell you're doing that, because they didn't understand radio waves yet, or any sort of wave. So again, it's probably a very real, scientifically testable system, or mechanic, or law of the universe that we just haven't discovered yet. And I think that's cool. That's exciting to me. More discoveries to be made. Not magic in the sense, the difference between magic and science, which is a very critical point, is just understanding. Well, there's one difference. If it's real magic, then there's no actual fundamental root to it. That is to say, if magic is orderly and structured, and you can explain it, and it's repeatable, then it's just science that we don't understand yet. At the fundamental level, you could say that magnetism is magic, because we can't actually explain exactly why the force of magnetism exists. It just does. At the fundamental level, there is just because that's how it works. And that's the same thing for magic, in magical universes. As long as it's orderly and structured, you can just label it as science. It's just you don't understand exactly how it works at the fundamental level yet. But we'll get there, eventually. It might take centuries or millennia, who knows. As the great Mulder always said, the truth is out there. Now time for the quote of the day. Normal is getting dressed in clothes that you buy for work and driving through traffic in a car that you are still paying for. In order to get to the job, you need to pay for the clothes and the car. And the house you leave vacant all day, so you can afford to live in it. Ellen Goodman. Yeah, I think George Carlin had a bit about this too, but it's basically, don't focus too much on the material world because you're a slave to it otherwise. You spend your entire life working so hard, just to go back home for a few hours and then go back and do it all over again. If you don't enjoy it, it's not a great life. And I mean, I get it, it's hard to shift out of that when society is structured around it. But you can do it. You can buy land, build a small home, try to just, over time, have that little slice. That is minimalism. And you can still be connected to the world now because of Starlink and satellites and solar panels and generators and batteries and propane and wood fire and all that. You can live a great life without being dependent on anyone else or dependent on a job that you hate. So you can be off grid and still go to work, but then you just have this option not to be there. You're not doing it just because you're supposed to. It's okay to think outside of the box, especially if the box inside is rather boring or depressing. Yeah. Leave the depressing box. Find a better one. Like the video, subscribe, hit the ball. Hit the ball. Okay. Okay, songs are found 1772. The winter wait at Serendipity's gate. So I think you met a player that you knew in a past iteration of the game. If I'm correct, we live in a simulation, and my guess is, it's like an MMORPG that we could play now in this simulation, where you log in, you get to experience a character that isn't you, in a different kind of world, and then you just play it out from there. This is almost like meeting a person that was a different player in a different server, or different iteration of the simulation. And in that iteration, you were probably very close in some format. The biological sex could be different. You might have been lovers in a different universe or different simulation, but now you don't even know each other. But in the original server, you still saved each other as friends. And now when you're in a different server together and you meet each other, which apparently is quite rare because these stories don't come about very often. There's so many people in such a large world, it's not that surprising. But if you do happen to run across them, you know it. There's like an instinctual pull. You can't explain it. Well, I guess I just did, but you can't explain it deeper than that. But it's there. Have you ever met one of your friends that, a stranger that you never met before, but you knew them? Because that's never happened to me, and I want it to happen. Okay, songs are found 1773. Hunches and Hues. How we avoided the blues. Okay, so first off, what the hell's going on with your neighbor? They have this pile of garbage in their backyard, in their patio, and they toss finished cigarettes into it all the time? They are directly responsible for the fire. Now, I guess no one was killed, but still, property damage, having the fire trucks go. Shouldn't that be so negligent it should be illegal? Like, they should go to prison for that, at least for a bit, or pay massive fines. I don't know. The fact that they're still there later on to cut your internet, which, by the way, it's not your cutting your Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is from the router, which is just a local area for that's not a big deal. It's just a technical point that I see a lot of people make these days where they're so used to just using Wi-Fi, they don't realize the actual internet is not Wi-Fi. That's just the local area connection to the broader internet. Anyways, they cut your hard lines, the cable or fiber that was coming into your home. And why? They're that petty? These people sound like horrible neighbors, and I would just, I would go crazy living next to them. But in terms of the glitch, I mean, it's more of a power story. Your husband, it seems like he doesn't even appreciate the ability he has, where he has this sixth sense, this supernatural sense above the normal to perceive of future possibilities. Now, I've discussed it before, but the further out you permeate into the future, the harder it is to predict what future is going to happen from the current set of circumstances. But in a short term, a few hours, it's doable if you have enough information going on in your brain. But even then, it's still just probabilities. So your husband might have these instincts, and sometimes he might be wrong. But if they're sharp enough, it might not be that often that he's wrong. So definitely trust your husband's gut all the time. I would. Okay, Answer File 1774. Featherweight, A Glimpse from Beyond. Okay, now this one is spooky, and I don't have a really good explanation for it. Could there have been a spirit nearby that saw this seance and just decided to, well, not prank you, but just participate in what you were expecting to have happen? Maybe? Can spirits levitate that way or take a lot of weight off of a person so they can hold themselves with just a few fingers? I mean, maybe? But that doesn't really fit. I don't think that's the case, but I don't know. I mean, was it her mind somehow creating an anti-gravity field beneath herself somehow? I don't know. This one has me stumped, and it's those games like Bloody Mary, saying it in front of a mirror. I know nothing would come of it, logically, but I'm still never gonna do it, I've seen the Supernatural episode, and I'm good. Call it a day. Now time for the joke of the day. Oh, this one's topical. Okay. Why did Donald Trump take a bullet to the ear? Because he didn't react when the Secret Service yelled, "Donald, duck!" Oh, man. Yup. Case Answer File 1775. In the dark of night, something wasn't right. Okay, so the vibe of this story was spooky as well. A lot of spooky stories these times, leading up soon into Halloween. Ooh, can't wait. Makes you wonder. Did you just randomly, for one time, sleepwalk? And that's all this was? You were kind of lucid dreaming and then sleptwalked into your bed? I think it's more than that. I think the fact you couldn't remember the conversation is very interesting. It's almost like some entity was trying to communicate with you in that void of sleep. So I think when you were talking to this person that wasn't really there, not your roommate, I think in that moment you were asleep and they were communicating with you. And after they were done, they guided you back. So it wasn't a sleepwalk event where it's just a natural phenomena from your mind. I think this was an intervention of some kind, but you couldn't remember what they said. Huh. I don't think it's a guardian angel event. You know what? Maybe this is interesting. What if other people's guardian angels can sometimes try to communicate with us, but unless they can only clearly communicate with people they are assigned to. If they're going out of the way to help other people or inform them or tell them something they're not supposed to know, maybe that's against the rules and it's very hard to do. That's just pure speculation. I have no idea. Maybe this was just a sleepwalking event and, lucid dreaming. But I don't know. Is that common to sleepwalk one single time and never again? I don't think it is, but maybe it's not impossible. So we'll chalk this up as unclear, but unclear and extremely scary. Case Notes for File 1776. Reflections blur and faces stir. Yeah, so there is a condition where people are not able to distinguish between faces. I forgot the name of it, but it's pretty rare, but it does exist and it's well known. But I don't think this could be it. It doesn't sound like any medical condition I've known of because, well, first off, this never happens to you if it's mirrors in public, reflections in public. It's only when you're alone. It's almost like when you're alone, the server cluster is not interfacing with your mind properly. It's almost like there's a disconnect or not enough processing power allocated to your mind. How I think the simulation works is there's a server cluster, processing information, but all the visual parameters, that's our brain interpreting it. It's like our brain is a graphics card. And maybe sometimes there's errors in our brain or the input information. But in this case, because it's only happening to you, I think it's an interface connection error or maybe a part of your brain in the real world, which, if I had to guess, I think our brains in the simulation are more or less, reconstructions of brains in the real world. I think that makes sense. Could be wrong, could be that brains are entirely different in the real world, but if I had to guess, I think they're similar. Just from the complexity of it, I think it'd be easier to model that complexity into the game instead of trying to recreate it from scratch, because it's just so freaking complicated. The whole human body is, similar. It's almost like the God saying that we're made in his image. Maybe we are actually made in his image, but it's really just us in the real world, if that makes sense. And I think it's even more evidence that the pictures and images of stuff look normal. So it's like a delay in your processing of information in the moment, but the server itself is doing fine. It's an interface problem. Hell, it could be whatever connection, we're jacked into, like in the Matrix, they jack into the back of your skull, which is, I do not want to imagine that. That's, imagine how that feels. Ugh. Probably a connection issue is my guess. I wonder if they can detect that in the real world. Probably. And if so, they'll fix it eventually, but maybe they can't fix it while you're actively playing, so it'll only be when you jump back in the next time that the connection is fixed. So this time you'll just have to deal with sometimes having blurred reflections when you're alone. When you're not alone, I guess they fix it by just having enough processing input. The connection is faulty, but you pump enough juice into it and it fixes itself, something like that. Curious. Now time for the joke of the day. I got fired from Pepsi after working there for 20 years. See, the problem is I tested positive for Coke. Betrayer! Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.